a large reason for that as well is because there just wasn't as many people that looked like me doing this type of work and who would care about going into the community and doing it. Women are less than like 30% of the industry. It is 77% white men, yet is a 90% success rate.
We are creative, we are constructive, we are imaginative, we are exploring, we are creative solutions.
Hi, and welcome to the Creative Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, you'll hear interviews with innovative creative artists, entrepreneurs, business executives, and thought leaders. You'll have a front row seat as they explore their internal, uncharted waters about what inspires them to grow, achieve, and innovate. Get their insights and realizations as I tease out answers to questions they've never pondered before. You'll also learn how to supercharge your innovative drive, mindfulness, and communication skills so you can succeed. This episode is brought to you by my favorite productivity hack, the Brain FM app, this podcast's host, Podbean, as well as my book, Speak From Within, Engage, Inspire, and Motivate Any Audience. Hey there, and welcome to the Creative Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. Thank you so much for listening. I have got to introduce you to this week's guest, Tamika Franklyn. This is so cool. We just found out, actually, that we live just a couple miles away from each other, which we did not realize when we first met. But let me tell you about Tamika. I know, isn't that funny? Tamika is the founder of Precision Franchise LLC, and she guides aspiring entrepreneurs to own proven model businesses. I can't wait to find out exactly what all that means because it's so cool. She has access to over 3,500 franchise businesses and opportunities where she provides one-on-one consultations to determine the best business model for her clients' lifestyles and goals and to prepare them with introductions to the franchisors. Tamika, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. This is cool.
So I'm thrilled and I'm excited, and I honestly didn't know much about franchises before I started sort of researching all of this. So because I can tell you, I worked in a franchise when I was a kid. I worked at a Baskin-Robbins, but I was certainly not the owner. So I would love to talk to you about your journey to get here. Like, how did you go from where you were, wherever that was, to being someone who guides aspiring entrepreneurs to become franchisors themselves?
Yes, yes. So many moons ago, I used to I used to be in the insurance industry. And as such, you join a lot of different organizations like the Chamber of Commerce's and things of that nature. You do a lot of different networking. And I remember being in a meeting at one where someone came in. I remember there was two people that came in and they started talking about franchises. Um, I was just taken back by some of the information that was given on being owners. So what stood out to me was the statistics. Well, the first thing that stood out to me was that it just wasn't food. And that's something that I make sure that I highlight all the time. I mean, food is literally probably like less than 14% of the industry. A lot of people don't realize that because when they think of franchises, the first thing they think of McDonald's. So that was the first thing that they kind of highlighted. Then the next thing was the entries as far as the investments. Yes, of course, there's going to be businesses where if you're thinking of the McDonald's, et cetera, yeah, you're thinking of the hundreds of thousands of dollars, $1 million, investment to be a part of those big businesses. However, I did not realize that there was a large percentage of franchises that you can enter into for a fraction of that cost. So these are the things that kind of was popping up, and I'm like, wow, this is great information. Why is this the first time hearing it? And then I think the number one thing that really blew my mind, but besides the fact that there were thousands of franchises out there, was that it was almost a 90% success rate. And when you're involved in business and you go to these different meetings and everything, it's very common to hear that, within the first 5 years, 50% of all small businesses have a 50% success rate or failure rate, is what they usually say.
Mm-hmm.
So when I heard 90%, I'm just like, okay, why is this the first time I'm hearing about it? So I just kind of stayed pretty close to the industry. I used to, without really being in the industry, I would just naturally just tell people, when you find out about like something, that good thing, and then, like, hey, did you hear about what, I always tell someone. So I always say, we should focus on franchises. We should focus on franchises. That's what we really need to do. So now fast forwarding back years later, I got the opportunity to actually be a part of it. And I didn't realize that it was a business that I can own for myself, to be the
Mm-hmm.
person to help you in owning the business. So what I come to realize is that even in my, with networking and things of that nature, you would always run into an insurance agent. You would always run into how many networking events can you think of? You ran into real estate agent, or insurance agent, or someone like that.
Mm-hmm.
But how many people have you ran into that was like a franchise broker or a franchise consultant?
Me
Probably,
personally,
yeah.
none that I know of.
Right. Which is exactly my point. So I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, I was like, you know what? I think the gap, or what's I think a large reason for that as well is because there just wasn't as many people that looked like me doing this type of work,
Hmm.
and who would care about going into the community and doing it. Because women, we're less than like 30% of the industry. It is 77% white men, yet it's
Wow.
a 90% success rate. So how do we change that? So I figured, like, look, what if I go against the grain a little bit? What if, instead of doing what everyone else does in the industry, what if I focus on education, putting out some webinars, highlighting the different types of opportunities, like, busting particular myths and stuff like that, and really focusing on women, and people of color,
Mm-hmm.
minorities, just so that they know that these opportunities are available.
That's beautiful. Okay. You have said so much and now I'm synthesizing it, so I'm taking a second. Uh, it's interesting to me, first of all, the statistics that you quoted, that 90% success rate, and most of the people who are franchise owners are men, white
Mm-hmm.
men specifically. And this is the Creative Solutions podcast, and you've come up with a really creative solution by taking this and turning it on its head and going, okay, instead of focusing on helping more white men become franchise owners, I'm gonna turn it around, and I'm gonna say, okay, let me focus on people of color, and specifically women. So it's probably a strange question, but I'm wondering how much acceptance is there when you're talking to, especially women.
Mm-hmm.
Because for me, yay women, but especially when you're talking to someone and you're saying, okay, this is something you can do, how often do you get people who go, oh, absolutely, versus how often does someone have sort of almost a lack of confidence or feel like they don't deserve to do this? There's a psychology at work here that I'm very curious about when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking to people who are curious but honestly feel like, oh, I could never do that.
So I think that that's going to be, that's always going to be a consistent battle,
Hmm.
um, within yourself. Just how we do tend to lack confidence in particular areas. And, we can definitely, we could go on, about stuff like that. I think, I guess because of where I try to not necessarily focus, but I try to put my attention to going into women's networks and things of that nature, because they're already there with the mindset of, I want to see what's going on. I want to do something. I want to do this. So depending on the networks that I'm in, I feel like you have a better chance of speaking to women that at least they're curious to know,
Hmm.
like if it's, let's say it's a women's financial literacy, you know, program or
Hmm.
something like that. Well, I
Hmm.
know that all the women there, that, they're there for that reason.
Hmm.
So I'm going to speak to women that's already trying to move forward in particular area. So I'm not sure if that's, if I'm answering particularly your question, but I feel like that is exactly where I would continue. Like I just make sure I go to different networks where we are showing up. And I just want to let us understand that here, this is another path. Here's another path
Hmm.
to ownership that you just may not have thought about because you thought it was untouchable.
I love that you said that this is another path, and you're working with, and you did totally answer the question. It sounds to me like you're what they call the ideal customer avatar when we're talking about being an entrepreneur. The people you're going to, with specifically with women, but also, people of color in general, you're going to places where those people who are curious about perhaps finding a business or forming a business or being a franchisee even are already
Mhm.
hanging out, right? They're already in that mindset. Do you
Right.
find that you have to work other parts of the mindset in order for them to feel confident enough to bring this out and to start the process and to finish the process?
That's an interesting question. What it's reminding me about is actually, I had an episode, though the episode is not going to come out until May. Um, and I'm speaking with someone who is a business therapist. She's a therapist specifically for women business owners.
Mm-hmm.
And we touched on some of those things. I think that, like anything else, there's going to be experts in those particular areas that can tap into that.
Mm-hmm.
I am the type of person because my mannerism is always friendly. I'm always advisory. I'm always going to have. So I feel like in anything that I do, you're going to let your guard down a little bit with me because you see that you can, and we'll go into these particular conversations and stuff like that. But what's great is that I do have, you know, network. I have a network where I could tap into. So if I feel like there is an area where there's an expert that you should definitely speak to or connect to, I'll do that. I'll connect you to, let's say it would be that business therapist, or, if we're talking in terms of, financial, there's different programs that I usually say, hey, they have great mentorship at this program, I suggest that you do, you might want to check them out as well. So it's not just me. I can't be the all, but I definitely would try my very hardest to try to connect you with the people to make this a whole for you. That makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. Yeah, I have the same kind of database. When clients of mine need something that I can't provide, I will refer. The referrals are a beautiful thing. So, talk to me a little bit about you go to these places, you find someone and they go, "Oh, this sounds really interesting to me. How do I do it? What do I do next?" What is your
Mm-hmm.
process to helping someone go from I'm interested in this to
Mm-hmm.
having a franchise of their own?
Absolutely. It's a great question. So my process is basically first would be that consultation. Now I do have a great tool on my website. That's the questionnaire. And the reason why I would bring that up first is because it is a great thing to do before meeting with me, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not like it's not like okay, you have to do that first. Like I'm not making it mandatory. But the
Mm-hmm.
reason why I bring that up is because it allows you to also see the different industries and you can rate them. So it kind of gives me a little more information about you. There's going to be questions that I'm going to ask you in the consultation as well. That's going to be on there. Some financial questions, but I think the more eye-opening thing is that it has like this list of industries where you can rate your level of interest from 1 to 10. And I think it's also an education piece for you as well, because you might see something like, oh wow, wait, vending? I didn't even know that vending was a part of this. Like, yeah, I'm very interested in that. Oh, beauty? Yeah, like a 9. So that way, when we do have our first call, because we'll first educate you on how we will work together.
Mm-hmm.
I always feel like I have to say it at least 2, 3 times just to make sure you guys understand it is free. There's no gimmicks. There's nothing I'm gonna hit you with at the end. The consultation is absolutely at no cost to you, and how my goals are to understand what your goals are and what your
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle and your transferable skills. So once we get through that conversation, I really ask you particular questions that's going to, it's really like it's a needs assessment. Once
Mm-hmm.
we do that, I then take that information, I go back into an inventory where I'm able to, based off of what we've spoken about and the things that I know that's important to you, I then filter out different businesses that are all proven business models.
Hmm.
So I filter that out. I come up with, maybe I might, sometimes I go a little crazy and I'm like, oh my God, there's like 10 here. Like I need to, I need to bring this down. But, but I try to pick, to pick out a good, 5 or 6 businesses. And then we're going to set up what is called a business review. So once we do the business review, that's when I'm going to educate you just a little bit more on some of the terms that you're going to see. Whether we're going to talk about the FDD, which is the franchise disclosure document, what some of the items are, just particular things that, terms that you're going to come across. I'm going to educate you real quick on first. And then we're going to look at these, let's say 5 businesses that I pulled out for you and explain to you, here's why I chose business A, it's this, and and it's on a high level, but it's enough for you to understand whether or not the goal is to understand whether or not you would like to have a further conversation. So after we're done, you might say, well, you know what, out of the 5, I think I really like the first 3. So
Hmm.
that's what we're going to focus on, or that's my goal, is to narrow down as to say maybe to about 3 or 4, and let's like focus there. And then is where it'll be the follow-ups as far as like, okay, so now my next step is to make sure to set up the calls and get those calls going, because each of the businesses is going to have their own process as well. And then so there's going to be times where I will join you also on a call. Sometimes I'll jump in. I may because I feel like I'm an internal advocate for you as well, right? So I'm going to
Hmm.
jump in. There's certain things, like if I feel like you're being a little bit shy on something and I know that's important to you, I will ask it.
Hmm.
I would also provide you with resources such as great questions to ask the franchisors, great questions to ask in the validation process. The validation process is where you're actually speaking with other owners, the franchisees. Very important step that I think everyone should go through before they completely say, nah, I don't think this is the right business for me. So you go through those steps. Once we get further along, there's going to be a time where you're going to start, saying, okay, I think it's going to be either this one or that one. You're going to you got to get to the point where you're narrowing it down between 2, or unless it's just clear as day, it's got to be this one. Right. And then we can continue down that process, and then you get the FDD. There's going to be some resources on how to read an FDD. I'm going to pair you also with a franchise attorney, because I always advise that you make sure you have a franchise attorney specifically. I'll also pair you with someone in funding. And when I say pair you, I don't mean that these are the people that you have to use. It's just that in my network, this is going to be also a free consultation. So it's just great to go through that process and just know what it is that you're getting into, excuse me, and have that conversation with them. And then you can make the decision on, because let's say you have access to another way of funding. You don't have to then go through any of the funding partners that that I know. You can use your own. So again, these are all part of the process that I kind of guide you along until a decision is made. And at that point is when you move forward. I'm sorry.
Take your time. That's not a problem. If you need to cough, you need to cough. Life gets in the way of art, as my Aikido sensei says. So, the thing, I'm listening to you and I'm like, it just sounds really cool. But then I realized just now that what I didn't do at the beginning of our chat is to ask you to tell me the difference between a franchise and a regular business. What is that difference?
Okay, yeah. So the main difference and the main reason why they're so successful is because it's a system. You're buying into a proven business model, which is why we call them proven business model. It is something that's already been tried, proven, and they've gone through all the mistakes. Everything is done. So you're getting, a well-run engine, basically. Now that does not mean that it's just here you go, good, just click a button and you're good to go. Absolutely not. This is your own business and you have to work it as such. You have to have an entrepreneurial mindset as well. because you have to make sure that you are putting in the work, especially depending on the type of business you have. So that's the main difference between owning a franchise and starting a business from scratch. It also has different support systems within the franchise system as well. So you may have, with certain brands, they may be an entire call center all on behalf of your business.
Mm-hmm.
They may help you with site selection, with the real estate, the marketing, they may have a mentor, so there's a lot of things that are put in place for you to be successful as well. And that you're not having to figure out, where do I go for each nuance in this business, which is why, again, that's what makes them successful. And just like for technical, just to let you know that, because I think that this is a misconception that a lot of people has as well, is that sometimes when people see more than one location of a business, they assume that it's a franchise, and it's not. How a franchise is really a franchise is every franchise must have an FDD. You cannot be a franchise without an FDD, which is the franchise disclosure document, and it's heavily regulated. It's something that they have to renew every single year. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Awesome. Yeah. And it is interesting because, as I said early on in our chat, I worked at a Baskin Robbins, which was a franchise in high school. That was my job. And my bosses owned their franchise. They didn't, they had other businesses, but this was something that they owned. And I guess the thing is, like, where it was located was right next door to a deli. So when people came to the breadbasket for dinner, it was super easy to go right to the Baskin Robbins right after and go grab ice cream. Or if you're coming to get food, take out from the breadbasket deli, which was not a franchise, it was a one-off business. You could go and get your pint of Rocky Road or whatever afterwards. So when you're in that space and you're kind of going, okay, this is going to be a franchise, and you said that I don't know if it's a central location or a central company of which the franchises are sort of arms, but the choosing of, for example, locations. So I guess the question is, like, I'm going to just backtrack just a second and go, okay, an adult bookshop is probably not one you're going to want to open in Salt Lake City, right? This is something that probably would not do terribly well. Even if you're going, this is what I absolutely want to do, even if it might be a proven business model, say in New York City, it might not fly in Salt Lake City. So when you're going through the process with people and you're going, okay, this is the franchise business that you would want to open, but you live in Salt Lake City or you live in other parts of the country that your franchise idea might not fly. How do you guide I guess you call them clients? How do you guide your clients to choosing something that's going to be as successful as it can be with all of those other kinds of factors in addition to the franchise they might want to open?
So there's a couple of things you said there. So one, when it comes to, I want to clarify that it does not have to be, again, because that's another misconception that people think that, again, when it's a franchise, it's brick and mortar. Like there's franchises where it's B2B, it's real estate, where you don't need to have a physical location at all. So depending on the type of business is what's going to determine that as well. So as far as like, if it is something that is brick and mortar, I always say you are the expert in your own market as well. So yes, the franchises, they'll have their market research. They'll know where territories would be great, where they have the hot markets and things of that nature. But you are the expert in your own market as well. So you have to also do that, keep that in mind, because I always tell my candidates or clients as well, is that you want to make sure you're doing your own research and doing your due diligence as well. So that's definitely one thing that I would say. The franchise is not going to be interested in opening in areas where they don't think it's going to work either. So they're going to have their own type of market research as well. And they'll tell you, like, for example, if I'm going through the process with someone like right after the consultation, I might have thought of, you know what she'll be good at? She'll probably love I don't know, the home industry or I'm thinking of one and the name is not coming to me, but with flooring or something like that. And then I go and I pull it and I'm like, oh wait, it's not in this area. So then
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to show it to her because I would have already have done the work
Mm-hmm.
and doing like the territory search first to make sure that it's even liable, it's even available in her area.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the couple of things that I would do.
That's cool. Yeah, because this is one of those things where I'm thinking with the Baskin Robbins, it was perfectly
Mm-hmm.
placed. But
Mm-hmm.
there are other places that would not be perfectly placed. Now, you mentioned and you don't have to mention any specific names, but you said you can
Mm-hmm.
have a franchise that has no brick and mortar location at all. It could be
Mm-hmm.
entirely online. What is the difference between having a brick and mortar versus an entirely online franchise?
The first the first thing is going to be cost. Like so a lot of times, people would ask me like, oh, but what's the cheapest one or something like that. And I can't really answer that. Because it's like, well, it just depends on the industries and it depends on what type of business that you're going to ultimately own. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to look for a restaurant, that's going to be on your higher end because it's definitely brick and mortar. Now you're dealing with employees, you're dealing with equipment, you're dealing with food, you're dealing with all kinds of things that's going to add, to that investment.
Mm-hmm.
However, if you're owning a business and it's a employment recruiting business, that's a franchise or medical billing or something like that, then you're dealing with very minimal employees. Maybe you only need you and one other person,
Mm-hmm.
to own a business like that. And, being that you don't have the cost of, the opening a physical location, then your entry level, your investment is going to be way lower than that. If it's vending machines, actually, I would say vending machines is the probably one of the lowest entry investments that I've seen
Hmm.
so far. So it's wide, but that's what is going to determine the type of investment you're going to have. But again, that's why it's important to start with the person because you can't come in and say, well, what can I get for 80,000 or something like that. It's more like, okay, well, let me find out more about you, because just because I can show you something that's low, that doesn't mean that it's the right fit for you. You might hate it.
Right.
It might be everything that you don't actually like doing. So yeah. So hopefully that does that is that clear? Does that make sense?
It absolutely it does, and you just touched on something that I was going to ask about next. So well done, you. Here's the thing, right? You said, oh, it might be something that you hate doing, so let's maybe not steer towards that. But
Mm-hmm.
how do you handle it? Because having an entrepreneurial, you and I are both entrepreneurs. Having an entrepreneurial mindset does mean you're usually full of ideas. You're usually an
Mm-hmm.
idea person. You're usually someone who's raring to go and do your own thing. A franchise is also an entrepreneurial endeavor, but it's someone else's idea rather than
Mm-hmm.
yours because you said it's a proven business model. So,
Mm-hmm.
how do you handle that part of it when you're working with someone who's an entrepreneur at heart?
Mm-hmm.
What they're going to do if they do a franchise is not their idea.
So I think that that's why consultation, the types of questions that I'll ask and uncover things. I think that's where that comes into play.
Mm-hmm.
Like for example, I had on the last webinar that I had, there was someone who used to be a teacher
Mm-hmm.
and who knew that she would end up being an owner. However, it's you would just guess like, oh, so she's a teacher, so she's doing what, tutoring, right? No, her business is actually property management.
Mm.
Yes, that's a franchise. Now what how did that come together? Well, it was probably uncovered, how she worked, what are the things that she liked doing. What do you really like doing? Sometimes we could be really good at several things, but we don't really like it.
Yeah.
Just because I'm good at it doesn't mean it's something that I want to do every day. I just know how to do it, you know? So,
Absolutely.
so it's like, so when I ask that specific question, I get specific to that point because sometimes it's missed. It's like, oh yeah, I do, spreadsheets, stuff like that. But what do you actually like doing? Well, you know what? I actually like mentoring. Yeah, I actually really like that mentorship space. So maybe I might think of some of the coaching franchises that we have. You know what I mean? So it's really about pulling the things that you are passionate about, the things that from your background, your transferable skills, and kind of opening your eyes to the different types of businesses that are out there that would be something that you would enjoy doing.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Because yeah, it wasn't your idea, but if you love, mentoring children, and you love science and everything, and I showed you this great brand that's all about STEM, you're gonna love that. And you're gonna do extremely well in that business.
You're singing my song. I worked at NASA for many years, and STEM and STEAM and STREAM are my catnip. So I love that. Yeah, I think there's so much to be said for that notion that when we're talking about the psychology of owning your own business, that so much of it has to be that you have to love at least something about it, because if you don't, you're going to burn to a crisp. And so
Right.
I'm glad that you're out there talking about that, Tamika, because I think it's important. Now, you said something in the materials that you sent to me that I would love to sort of address.
Okay.
You had mentioned that we're going to talk about some of the common myths on this industry, and I think we've done that. But
Mm-hmm.
you said something that I'm like, that I went, how would that work? You said, and the fact that it does not cost to work with me. And I
Mm-hmm.
went, as I read that, I went, well, how does her business make money? Because much as it's lovely that you'd be doing this and altruistic if you were independently wealthy, you must have a business model that allows you to make money in some way, even if it's not your clients who are paying you. How does that work?
So I want you to think of, and I even talk about this actually during the consultation, because I want whoever speaks to me to be at ease, that there's not going to be a I gotcha moment, right? So think of a real estate agent when you're looking to buy a house, right? They may ask you some questions. What is it that you're looking for? Well, you know what, I got 2 kids. I need to have at least 3 bedrooms, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It needs to be near school, et cetera, right? They go in their inventory, normally at MLS, they come back with some options. You go around, you look at a few houses, and let's say it just didn't work out at that moment. I'm not seeing anything right now. You don't pay the real estate agent for the 10 houses that they showed you if you don't move forward. So in that sense, that's basically how I work. I am
Mm-hmm.
compensated by the brands, by the franchise brands, and I
Mm,
don't work for any one particular brand. So
mm-hmm.
just like a real estate agent will have access to a large inventory of different investments or homes that you can that's for sale that you can own, it's pretty much the same in that sense, that I'm going back into an inventory of businesses that already has relations, that knows that they pay people such as myself for bringing good candidates, because at the end of the day, it needs to be a candidate that they need to they need. It's not just about you choosing a business or choosing a franchise, but like, okay, I want that one and that's it. They have to choose you too. So you have to be success. They have to believe that you will be successful in their model as well. So we are compensated as consultants, as brokers, as advisors. They're all used interchangeably in the business. We are compensated for bringing those candidates in. So let's say we go through that entire process. You did the business review. You're now on your discovery day, which is basically now you're going to go to like wherever the headquarters is. You're going to meet people in the organizations and all this type of things, just to see what the culture is about, to see if this is the right fit for you. You decide I want to move forward, and I'm going, this is the business for me. I can't wait to start. Where do I sign? So you're going to move forward. At that point is when that franchise business will then compensate me.
Mm. Okay, got it. Yeah, because I was like, how does that work? That's awesome. That's a wonderful way of making sure that the person who is working with you feels comfortable and confident that you have their best interests at heart. You know, you're not trying to push a particular one, uh, which I think is great. So let's say somebody does this and wants to work with you. What does a successful process look like?
Mm. So a successful process is, well, one, make sure that you are going to be responsive and you're ready to kind of block off some time so that you can have these conversations. Because especially if you're speaking to more than one business, it can get overwhelming.
Mm,
Because you got to set up, because we're setting up the calls, I'm syncing calendars. And it can start to get overwhelming if you have like three or four
hmm
that you're looking at the same time.
hmm
So it's like pace yourself, but make sure that you are blocking all time. Like, okay, like the best times for me to do these types of calls are going to be Thursdays and Fridays. So then we'll stick to that. You know what I mean? Between 2 and 4, we'll
hmm
stick to that. So that way we'll be able to. It won't. That way we'll manage the time well, as well as far as making sure that we are paying attention to our emails because they're going to be sending you stuff as well. There's going to be things that you might have to fill out for some of them because every process is different. Um, there's going to be resources that they're going to provide you that by the time you do have maybe the second call, you should have already gone through it. So these are just things that you have to make sure that you are prepared for. So a successful person will, keep that in mind. Make sure that they are communicating both with myself and the representative of the franchise. Um, that they are going through the entire process. I feel like I run into too many times where they're making a fast decision to not move forward past the validation stage. I don't think you should drop any business before validations because why not find out from the horse's mouth? Because through validations, when you speak to other franchise owners, you can ask them very candid questions
hmm
that the franchisor or the representative of the franchisor is not able to answer legally. So you can ask them questions like, how long did it take you to break even? What did you do in your first year? Those. So why wouldn't you want to find out from the horse's mouth how things went with them in the system before you
hmm
decide whether or not this is a business? So I think a successful person will understand that and do their due diligence, and go through and just follow the process. That's something I say a lot. Follow the process. It is a process. Just follow the process. Make sure you do your own research as well. Don't take everything that's being thrown. There's nothing stopping you from, if it is a brick and mortar, swing by if it's in your area. If you're on LinkedIn and you could connect with another franchisee, connect with them, ask them some questions. So I think that, so those are some of the things that I would say would contribute to someone being successful in the process, is following the process, making sure they have the time and they're communicating, that they are communicating and they just going through each of the steps before a decision is made.
I mean, communication to me is so key to everything, right? I
Yes.
mean, in my day job, I teach people how to communicate and collaborate. So I'm always a cheerleader for that. But I'm also in the creative space. And I guess I'm wondering, with franchises, you say, you've said a few times it's a proven business model. So I have a
Mm-hmm.
little bit out of left field question for you. What is the most creative franchise? You don't have to give me a brand, but what is the most creative franchise and what is the most creative way someone has gotten a franchise to succeed?
The most creative, I don't know if I could ask what's the most creative franchise as opposed to maybe in the industry. I think there's a lot of creativity in the education industry.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen things as far as like, well, you're interested in STEM and everything. I've seen things with robotics. I've seen stuff with art.
Mm-hmm.
So there is going to be different types of industries that allow for creativity. I also want to touch on, because I thought where you were going with it was if there's any businesses as far as, can I, I don't know, do something slightly different, or would I be able to add something, to this business, or do I have to follow exactly how they say it? There is a lot of people, that's another misconception. There is some flexibility within franchises as well.
Mhm.
It just depends on the business. That's all. So, so it's not, you're not handcuffed or anything like that. So there is going to be some level of creativity. There's going to be some level um, of flexibility with how you do things as well.
Well, see, you're reading my mind constantly here because that was going to be my next question. So you've already answered it. I love that. No, seriously, it's very interesting. I mean, I'm fascinated. I'm completely fascinated by all of this. Tamika, I know you're in the middle of a conference and you've taken the time to chat with me.
Oh,
And I'm
this is
super
cool.
grateful that you've done that. If somebody says, I want to know more, I want to know more, I want to know what Tamika's doing, and I want to know how to get involved and maybe even look at
Mhm.
the idea. Where does somebody look to find you so that they can learn more? And also, do you have any resources that you can recommend for people to start down this road if that's what they're interested in?
Absolutely. So my business again is Precision Franchise, and I am on all social media as Precision Franchise. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. My name is Tamika Franklyn. Franklyn is spelled with a Y, and I also have a business page there, Precision Franchise LLC. The website is precisionfranchise.com. And I'm on Instagram as well, Precision Franchise, and Facebook at Precision Franchise LLC. I also recently launched a I recently launched the our YouTube channel, which is Franchise Vibes. And this is more of an extension, I think, of the webinars that I host. I host several webinars a year, and they're usually themed. Like, for example, for Women's History Month, I would have, a title like Women in Franchising, or some other type of focus or title within that month. So I host these webinars again, periodically with these themes, and anyone who is connected to me will have access to those webinars for free, and where they can ask live Q&A. So I'm really giving you like that insight that you're not normally getting, and seeing the different types of business and opportunities, and just speaking with some of these industry experts that's going to really be able to give you such a great insight on what's going on in the industry and the different opportunities that are there. And the Franchise Vibes YouTube channel, I love because it's more like a one-on-one, where it's going to be, there's a topic and there's the industry expert, and it's only about 22 minutes an episode, and we're really just digging into the topic just a little bit more. So I would highly, I would love it if you check out Franchise Vibes, and learn some stuff, and share, like what they say, like, subscribe,
Share,
and
like, and
share.
follow.
Yeah.
Yes, share, like, and follow. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
those are the things. Those are all the resources. So on my website, I did mention it earlier, precisionfranchise.com, you are able to check out, there's a free e-course that's available that tells you a little bit more. I'll go into a little more detail on how I can help you. And, that's something that you can just, download once you go onto the website. And there's the questionnaire that I spoke about, where you're able to rate the industries of interest, and of course, just book a consultation with me. And all of that you can get on precisionfranchise.com.
That's awesome. And thank you for listing those. The links are all going to be in the show notes, as they always are. But if you're listening to this, that I like acknowledging that people learn differently. So you're getting it in the show notes, but also Tamika has told you. Tamika, before I ask you my last two questions, because I ask these questions of everybody, again, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here. This has been so fascinating. And now I'm going, do I want a franchise? Do I want an education or an art or a music franchise? That might be very interesting. And so now I'm like, I'm going to go to your website myself and take a look. But yeah, it's so fascinating because there's something so powerful about knowing that you're helping, and that you're helping people who traditionally are underrepresented, as you said, in the
Mm-hmm.
space. So yay. And this leads me perfectly, I think, to my second to the last question. And that is, What is the thing that makes you get out of bed in the morning? And I don't just mean your alarm.
That's so funny because my alarm doesn't really get me out of bed all the time. Like I gotta hit snooze. Wow. Just you know what? I do love helping people. I think anything that I got involved with, even in my corporate setting, I always look forward to not I don't want to say the bottom line, but just the impact. I always look for the impact. Is there an impact that's being created? And just like I love the aha moments.
Mm.
That's what I love about this. And anything that I do, I love the aha moments. If I enlightened you at all, that makes me feel awesome. Whether you go forward or not, you know what I mean? It's just again, that enlightenment and that I know that I contributed to that moment where you're just like, oh wow, now like that makes sense. Oh wow, I understand. Wow, thank you. That I live for that.
That's awesome. I love that. And it is seeing that light shine in someone's eyes is just beautiful. I do the same thing when I'm teaching singing. I had one of my singing students just auditioned for he just literally auditioned for this huge choir in January, got in, and this is the second round of auditions for solos, and he just told me he got the second time he auditioned, he got a solo. And it just makes me feel so happy for him because he's thrilled, and I played a tiny part in that, and that I'm guiding him on that journey. And that moment of being able to go, you know what? I helped a little with that. I
Yeah.
get to celebrate that with him. And anytime my students do well, I'm like, yay. And so I'm sure that must just feel so wonderful to you
Yes.
when you see these successful franchises. I guess I have another question before my ultimate question. Do you stay in touch with the people whose franchises you've helped get off the ground?
I can. A lot of times, it's almost like, okay, free bird, fly, But, but because of the information that I'm constantly putting out, I will hear from people again, or if I see like we're usually connected on social media, or they're in my email list. I have a great newsletter that I now have come out, and so I love to hear from people. And besides, you never know, they may come back, they may want to do something else, they may want to tell me about someone else. So I love staying connected with those that I've helped as well.
Awesome. I love it. All right, cool. So here is the last question. And again, I ask everyone this question, and it's a silly little question, but I find that it can yield some profound answers. And the question is this.
Uh-oh.
If you had an airplane, environmentally friendly, of course, that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Oh, that could spy anything. Hmm. I guess right now I'm feeling you matter.
I love that. I
Yeah,
love
that's what
that.
came to mind right now. You matter.
That's awesome. I think that's great. Yeah, and it's a wonderful sentiment, and I love it. I love it, love it, love it. That one is right up there with be kind to me.
Yes.
That's
Please be kind.
yeah, but I love you matter. I think that's great. Well, Tamika, again, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. You're fabulous. I love it. So to get back to the closing of the show, this is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Creative Solutions Podcast. As always, the show is brought to you by my favorite productivity app, Brain FM, by my book, Speak From Within, that's going to help you get over your public speaking fears, and also the confidence building tips that you can get in the show notes. You can always get a 15-minute mini coaching session with me. You know how to do that from the link in the show notes. All of Tamika's links are going to be in the show notes so that you can get in touch with her. I'm so grateful and glad that you are here to listen to this show. And if there was a question that you need to answer, you can get to SpeakPipe and answer it off the show notes. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Creative Solutions Podcast. As always, reminding you to be bold, be creative, and most of all, be kind. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the show if you're new, and it would mean the world to me if you told a friend about it. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2024. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope.